In the future where people stop aging at 25, but are engineered to live only one more year. Living time, which can be transferred among individuals on body contact, is displayed on a clock implanted in people's forearms. When that clock reaches 0, one dies instantly. Society is divided by social class, living in specialized towns called time zones. 28-year-old factory worker Will Salas lives with his mother Rachel in the ghettos of Dayton, where youth must work each day to earn few more hours of life, which they must also use to pay for everyday necessities. One day, Will saves 105-year-old Henry Hamilton from suffering a time robbery assault in a bar. Hamilton is attacked by Fortis, the elderly British mobster boss of a middle-aged gang called the Minute Men. Will rescues Hamilton, who tells him, "For few to be immortal, many must die," as there is essentially enough time for everyone to live a full life, but it is stockpiled for the rich to become immortal. Hamilton explains that rich control the population of the poor by exploiting the time zone system and by raising prices and taxes, so that poor keep dying, else, where would you put them? Later that night, Hamilton transfers 116 years to the sleeping Will, keeping only 5 minutes for himself, which he uses to go and sit on a bridge over an aqueduct. As his time expires, Hamilton falls into the river below. Will arrives too late to save him. Resident police force, the timekeepers, have various theories as to his death. Veteran timekeeper, Raymond Leon, is convinced he was murdered by a Dayton resident. Will visits his friend, Burrell, and gives him 10 years of time, one for each year of their friendship. Will waits for his mother at a bus station, only to discover that she didn't have enough time to pay for her usual bus ride after the price suddenly increased. Faced with a 2-hour walk, she tries to find anyone who can loan her time, but failing in that she runs in a panic. They encounter each other on foot, and as she runs and leaps into his arms, her time expires and she dies. Will decides to seek revenge and leaves for New Greenwich, with over a century on his clock. It costs time to cross time zone borders, and that's how the rich make sure that the poor never cross over into their zones. Upon arrival, he enters a casino, where he meets an old millionaire, time-loaning businessman Philippe Weis and his daughter Sylvia Weis. Sylvia invites Will to a party at her father's mansion. At the mansion, Will is apprehended by Leon, who confiscates all of his time, spare 2 hours. Will then escapes by taking Sylvia hostage. Returning to the ghetto with her, he drives into an ambush of Fortis, who steals most of Sylvia's, failing to take the last half hour as the approach of timekeepers forces him to leave. Will returns to consciousness and gives Sylvia some of his remaining time so they can return to his old neighborhood. They first visit Burrell to retrieve some time Will gave him earlier, only to find out from Burrell's grief-stricken wife, Greta, that he drank himself to death with 9 years on his clock. Sylvia pawns her jewelry for the meager price of 2 days. Finding themselves a shelter, Will calls Weiss demanding a 1,000 years ransom for Sylvia, to be distributed to the people of the ghetto. Will discovers that Weiss did not pay the ransom, but decides to let Sylvia go regardless. Leon appears to arrest Will, but is shot in the shoulder by Sylvia. Will transfers 2 hours of time to the disarmed Leon, so he can walk out of Dayton before he times out. Will and Sylvia escape in Leon's patrol car. They begin a series of time bank robberies, stealing time capsules which store time equivalents and distributing them to the poor. Fortis eventually tracks down Will and Sylvia a second time, and challenges Will to a time fight. Will uses the technique he learned from his late father to defeat Fortis. Will and Sylvia realize their previous efforts were futile, as the rich have the power to simply increase the cost of living in the ghettos to maintain the status quo. They succeed in stealing 1,000,000 years from Weiss' private headquarters in a time capsule, while informing Weiss in the process that nobody should be immortal if even one person has to die. As they return to Dayton, Leon crashes his car into Will's, but Will is able to hand the time capsule to a young girl who then distributes the time among the people. Leon eventually catches up with Will and Sylvia outside the city, holding them at gunpoint. Leon realizes that he had neglected to replenish his own time before going after them and dies. Will and Sylvia are left with seconds to live. Will runs to Leon's car and takes his allotted time. In a scene mirroring his mother's death, Will transfers the time to Sylvia seconds before she is about to die. Will and Sylvia continue robbing banks as part of their efforts to crash the system, now with a bounty of 100 years on their heads, while the rich attempt to cope with the sudden surge of people who now have enough time to change zones arriving from the ghettos. A news broadcast shows factory workers, now rich with time, cross time zones while the timekeepers look on. The last scene shows Will and Sylvia preparing to rob an obscenely huge time bank and continue disrupting the system. Thank you for watching.